Let's talk about mountain bike safety. And I'm not going to talk about helmets, but I'm going to lead off with helmets because I assume if you're riding a mountain bike trail that, or at least I hope, that you at least have a helmet on. Basic protection that we should all be using when we're riding off-road. Some trails require a helmet. But what if I told you there's another form of protection almost as important, but often overlooked? Mountain bike gloves, very, very important, but I don't see them all that often. For the past couple of years, I've been keeping up with when I see people with helmets versus when I see them with mountain bike gloves and a helmet. And a helmet's about 98% of the time out on the trail. Usually the only time I see people that don't have on a helmet, it's people with ironically budget bikes and they're just now getting out for their very first time. And then the one randomer that just refuses to wear a helmet, to each their own. If there's no rule on the trail, you do what you do, but I recommend that people wear helmets. But I also recommend that people wear gloves. And I'm going to show you a few different gloves that I use and talk about why you should wear mountain bike gloves. Well, I'll just get into the why. The main reason, you can see these gloves have a padded palm. And most mountain bike gloves usually do have a padding of some kind on the palm. But it's very important to have something like this because I've gone through my footage from where I crash. And guess what's the number one thing that always hits the ground first? Sometimes I land on my head, but almost always it's palms down. I'll see that in my crash footage and then carnage ensues. And I want you to go back and think about when you were a kid and you crashed. We all went down when we were a kid. And you remember those little dimples you would have in your hand from the gravel and how bad it hurt? Well, the same thing happens on trails. The difference is now you're not a little kid anymore. You weigh considerably more. You're going considerably faster on the trail. And the damage can be worse on your hands. It can be very bad. I've seen some completely ripped up hands on the trails because they didn't have gloves, and I still see those same people not riding with gloves. And I talked about 98% on the helmets at any given time on a group ride. When I'm counting people that have helmets versus have gloves, usually on a group ride, it's 100% that have a helmet, but only about 40% will have some protection on their hands. So I just talked about the palm protection and the padding here, and I'm going to go through some gloves, and I'm going to link to these gloves down in the description, talk about the pros and cons of each. But these are my Fire Lion gloves. I don't know if you can see Fire Lion there. These are decent gloves. I think they're about 17 bucks. I'll put the actual price on your screen if it's any different. What I like about these are good lightweight gloves that not only work well in the spring, but they work well in the summer. They're not super thin, but they do breathe quite well, and they give good padding. A good grip, but it's not cumbersome padding. You can see there's an open slot here for where you grip handlebars. These are a great glove for summertime. I've even used them in wintertime, but your hands do get a little cold. Very, very breathable, or decently breathable, but I mean, you are gonna sweat if you have gloves on with your hands, but if you don't have gloves on, you're loose and slippy on the grips usually. Gloves even help with that. So these are one option that I use, Fire Lion, but I wanna talk about, and there we go, Fire Lion Sport, look at that. But I wanna talk about if I step up, one up from these, a little bit more protection because these don't have any protection here, just on the palms. What if I want some protection on the top of my hands? And that does need protection. Well, let's look at another glove. Kenny Moto, you've seen these in many of my videos, these exact gloves, and look at that. Armored protection on top. Still have padding. Here on the palms, still have a slot to grip because these are motocross, but also mountain bike. They're made to be able to grip easy and well, but they're also thicker. Give a little protection up here on your wrist bones, but look at the padding. I mean, look here. Right through there, there's padding, and there's armor right here. And this can be important because not only palm down when I crash, I've hit my knuckles just riding through and a limb or clipped things and hit. And with gloves like this on, if I look close enough, there's probably a mar or two on these where I'm sure over time things have hit. I've been sitting on a bike just holding on and somebody rode by me and rode up to talk and just accidentally bumped my hand before. And it hurts without gloves on. But I talked to someone that had a buddy that crashed and their brake lever collapsed in on their hand. They went down and it collapsed in. it was actually right in through here that it crunched on them. Well, just think, if they had padding here, good gloves like this, that wouldn't be an injury. They would just laugh it off, replace their brake lever, and go about their business. These are good, very strong, very firm protection. Need to trim a little string there, but these are very good protection. I've worn these quite a bit in my videos. The downsides to these, I can feel it already, they're hot. I mean, they've got a little bit of airing vent here, but these are warm. Very, very warm. So what if I wanted to bridge something light duty, or even the lightest duty? Let me show you the lightest duty before I go through the bridge glove. The gloves that I think are the ultimate for mountain biking. Oh, and these are about $17.99 is the price on these Ken Moto gloves, just at any given time. Every now and then maybe you can find them a little cheaper, but usually about $17.99. And I'm gonna throw in the lightweight gloves. I have used these quite a bit. These Budun, I think they're Answer, but it's not with a W, just A-N-S-E-R. But I've ridden these. I mean, you've seen these gloves a lot. Look how many times I've washed them. They've started fraying a little bit. These are great summer gloves. They give me palm protection, not a lot, but enough. If you're skidding across dirt, something like that. Gonna give you palm protection, but no knuckle protection, but look how thin that is. That is a thin fabric, very breathable. These have been my go-to summer gloves for a couple of years. I think this is my third or so set of these. But these are good gloves. I think these are also about 17 bucks. Maybe these are 10 bucks. So let's talk about the bridge here. I've got ultra lightweight here. I've got kind of the best lightweight in my opinion, these Fire Lions, among my favorites, 17-ish dollars, 10-ish dollars, 17-ish dollars, 17, 18-ish dollars. Well, sitting in between these is a glove that gives breathability, but also gives motocross performance. Very good for mountain biking. Very safe on mountain biking trails, and they're motorcycle rated. Look at this. This is Iron Gios. These gloves are my go-to. Now I use these on my Vespa, which is what we're filming on here. Even the red trim matches the Vespa. But I found that these are not only armored, but they breathe well. They've even got little vents. You can see that? There's vents. So as you're riding, air can go in and flow through, but you still have palm protection. These have a unique protection though, and what I like so much about these is you don't get any ribbing oddities or anything standing up to affect your grip. Have this, but you have skid dimples made for sliding across street. If it can handle street, it can definitely handle trail. Even, you know how this goes, even touchscreen compatible. Works some of the time, not every time. That's on every glove I've ever had. But this, you can work your thumb and your finger. But look at that. Right in through here, good wear point, a good stress point, smooth armor there. I can hold on with these. They're not cumbersome, and they're far more breathable than a typical armored glove. You know, probably not quite as, well, definitely not quite as breathable as these, but on a motorcycle, at least on my scooter, the air will come in and force through and keep my hands cool. On a mountain bike trail, as long as you're moving, get some air through these. I think these are kind of the ultimate glove because they give the knuckle protection. They protect you here, but they also cool there, even there. Look at that. Armored protection here. Skid protection. The beauty of these though, Iron Gios, and by the way, their unboxing process is even nice. You know, I like good packaging. That says a lot about a company, how well they're willing to package stuff. I think these just come in a little plastic bag. But these come in a nice box, open it up, feel like you're getting something, but they're not costing a lot. I bought these on a limited time offer back in March for $8.99, and I just looked, and these Iron Gios on sale still for $8.99. I'm going to link them down in the description. I note some of my links, well, all the links for these gloves, affiliate links, doesn't cost you anything extra. But I want to share something that I think is very important on a trail. Remember, I said when I crash, every time my hands go out, I see it in every single crash video, even just when I fall over. My hand will go down. I've rubbed trees, grabbed trees. No poison oak if you have gloves on. No roughness on your hands. I think as important as a helmet, by the way, this is the Mongoose Capture, usable with the GoPro or Action Cam, but as important as a helmet, gloves often overlooked. Like I said, only about 40% of the riders I see, and experienced riders, just won't ride with gloves. I think they should, especially when you can get them as cheap as these that perform and give the armor protection of these. If you don't like armor, just something to give you palm protection. Like these that have now been relegated. You can see the dirt. These have been relegated to my yard work duties. That's how my gloves go. Start out with mountain bike or scooter or both, and then as I wear them out, they turn into garden gloves until I then move on to something different. But I wanted to tell you that I think it's very important, not only do you have a helmet, but that you have a glove, something to protect your hands. And here's the ironic part about this. The 60% that don't have on gloves, that have on helmets, just an average, on my group rides, I'll see some of those guys with elbow and knee pads, but no gloves. Just makes no sense. Makes no sense to me. What do you think? Do you ride with gloves? What do you think about these iron Gios? Pretty awesome, right? Comment below. Thanks for watching. And again, links down in the description. Have a great day.